Show us your papers. Step away from the counter. This is a federal operation.
I am the chief of police of this city. This is my home. You have no warrant. You need to leave.
Federal agents on private property.
Two ICE agents believed they had chosen correctly. They had an address from an anonymous tip, and a controversial May 2025 Department of Homeland Security administrative warrant memorandum their unit had been deploying to enter residential properties without judicial authorization contested in 3 federal circuits, never reviewed by a sitting federal judge. When Senior Agent Victor Kane and Agent Miguel Vargas pushed open the unlocked front door at 142 Oak Lane in Montclair, New Jersey, at 6:45 in the morning on January 28, 2025, and stepped uninvited into the warm kitchen of Chief Terrence Brooks, they triggered events that would end with both agents in federal prison, their careers permanently destroyed, and a legal precedent that would reshape federal immigration enforcement across the entire state of New Jersey. Chief Brooks was not simply a homeowner. He was a 58-year-old law enforcement veteran with 34 years of service, the sitting chief of police, an FBI National Academy graduate, and the institutional architect behind a generation of Essex County officers. His badge sat on the kitchen counter in plain sight. His unmarked black Tahoe with municipal plates sat in the driveway. None of it altered the calculation Kane had made before the door swung open. Dr. Alicia Brooks did not hesitate. The 55-year-old pediatric oncologist lifted her iPhone in one smooth motion and began recording in 4K resolution before the agents completed their second sentence, calm, clinical, narrating every constitutional violation in real time. Her camera held on the moment Kane's hand closed around her husband's forearm, and captured the flat contempt when he delivered the 4 words that would loop endlessly before a federal jury. That is what they all say. Within 7 minutes, Montclair PD had the emergency alert. Within 2 hours, the FBI had opened a federal investigation, but the machinery that would end 2 careers, produce an $8.4 million settlement, and rewrite state law did not begin with those calls. It began 2 years earlier in the quiet paper trail of a decorated chief who had been filing complaints, building a record, and waiting with the patience of a man who understood that justice does not arrive as spectacle, it arrives as method. If this story is already pulling you in, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the moment justice catches up. Drop a comment, tell me where in the world you are watching from. Share this with someone who needs to understand what quiet, patient resilience looks like when it finally gets its moment. The front door of 142 Oak Lane swung inward at 6:45 without a knock. No warrant was produced. No purpose was announced. The door opened, the way a door opens when the men pushing it have decided that permission is inconvenience rather than legal requirement. One firm push, footsteps crossing the threshold without pause. Senior Agent Victor Kane moved first, his tactical vest catching the low kitchen light, carrying the confidence of someone whose prior entries had proceeded without consequence. Agent Miguel Vargas followed half a step behind. Neither man paused at the framed commendations on the hallway wall or the department photographs ascending the staircase, the evidence of a house that had never imagined it would need to explain itself. The kitchen held the stillness of a household in its own morning rhythm. Steam rose from a coffee mug on the granite island, placed beside the chief's badge and credentials with the habit of a man who had set them there 10,000 mornings before. Through the window, the unmarked black Tahoe with Montclair municipal plates sat in the driveway, identifiable to any trained officer, which both agents, by every credential they held, were. Dr. Alicia Brooks stood at the island in pressed Navy hospital scrubs, a patient roster on her tablet. Chief Terrence Brooks moved through the kitchen in his faded Montclair PD sweatshirt and gray sweatpants, 58 years old, 34 years of service, and a man who had filed 2 formal complaints about this specific ICE unit in the preceding 24 months. Both had been labeled frivolous and buried. Kane announced their presence in the flat cadence of someone who had delivered these words across dozens of addresses without pushback, credentials produced and withdrawn in one practiced motion. The demand for papers issued without acknowledgement of the badge 4 feet away, the Tahoe in the driveway, or the commendations on the wall he had just walked past. He had assigned this kitchen a category before the door opened. The evidence before him did not fit it. He proceeded as though it did not exist. Chief Brooks placed his coffee mug down. Slowly. The deliberate stillness of a man exercising the discipline 34 years of command builds into reflex. He stepped between the agents and his wife with the quiet certainty of someone who understood exactly what was unfolding and what it would cost the men across from him. He stated his name, his rank, his badge number. He gestured to the credentials on the counter and to the Tahoe visible through the window. He placed every available exit in front of them. Kane's response was 4 words. Flat, not aggressive, something colder, practiced indifference, the product of 7 years of entries that had proceeded without correction. In 4 words, 34 years of decorated service were reduced to a suspect's protest in his own kitchen. Whatever Kane believed he was establishing, what he had actually done was hand the remainder of the morning to the woman at the island behind him. Dr. Brooks raised her iPhone in one unhurried motion, no fumbling, no visible alarm. The economy of a professional who has performed consequential actions in high-stakes situations until composure is reflex, not effort. She pressed record. Her narration began immediately: the time, the address, the agents by displayed identification, the absent judicial warrant, the failure to announce purpose, the law enforcement credentials of the homeowner both agents had declined to acknowledge. Systematic, sequential, the voice of a physician charting a deteriorating condition, because she understood that documentation converts a moment into a record, and a record into a consequence. Kane stepped forward. His hand closed around Chief Brooks' forearm, firm, controlling. Dr. Brooks did not pause. She stated for the record, without raising her voice, that a federal agent had physically seized a sworn officer in his private residence without lawful authorization, in direct violation of the Fourth Amendment. She pressed her Apple Watch twice. 2 taps. The emergency signal reached Montclair PD dispatch at 6:46. Kane invoked the DHS Administrative Warrant Memorandum, the May 2025 internal directive certain ICE offices had been using as cover for entries no judge had authorized. He cited it with the confidence of a man who had cited it before other families who had not been in a position to do what was now happening in this one. The memo had no judicial standing, had never been reviewed by any federal court, and the space it occupied between what the law required and what DHS had decided to proceed as though permitted had just permanently closed. The first siren reached Oak Lane at 6:49. Deputy Chief Vanessa Grant, 3 blocks east, 11 years of mentorship under Brooks behind her, came hard onto the street and blocked the agent's vehicle at the curb. 2 Montclair units arrived within seconds, an Essex County deputy, a state trooper who recognized the address. The block gathered, flashing light in under 4 minutes, neighbors appearing in doorways, phones already raised. Grant entered and read the kitchen in a single train sweep, her chief in his sweatshirt, an agent's hand on his arm, his wife recording from the island, his badge 3 feet from where Kane stood. She issued her command once, no ambiguity, no elevation. The full institutional weight of the Montclair Police Department in a single sentence. Kane's grip released the reluctant loosening of a man processing the dimensions of his error in real time. Vargas had already stepped back. Dr. Brooks' timer read 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The footage had auto-uploaded to secure cloud storage. Beyond reach. Beyond revision. Chief Brooks directed Grant to contact the FBI and stated the charges: unlawful entry without judicial warrant, physical assault of a sworn officer, conduct in material violation of the Fourth Amendment. At 7:28, both agents were in handcuffs. To those watching from the street, it looked like an ending. It was not. It was the first sentence of an account that had been accumulating for 2 years in complaint records labeled frivolous, in a personal archive built in silence by a man the system had dismissed, and it was only beginning. The FBI arrived at 7:14. 4 agents in suits, briefed in transit, establishing a perimeter and securing all devices within 6 minutes. Chief and Dr. Brooks remained in their home throughout, answering every question with the precision of 2 people who had prepared for this scrutiny long before it arrived. The anonymous tip was traced before noon. Cell tower data placed a prepaid handset on the Oak Lane block at the time of the call. Store footage 3 blocks south captured its purchase 4 days earlier. Voice analysis matched it to the property directly across the street. Richard Caldwell, 67, a retired accountant and 22-year resident who had filed 3 noise complaints against the Brooks household in 4 years, each traceable to the same week in June. Following the Juneteenth gatherings the family had hosted annually for over a decade. The complaints had never been about noise. Caldwell had recorded the raid from his second-floor window, intending to preserve a moment of vindication. He had not considered that investigators would examine every device on the block before the school buses finished their routes. His footage, steady, time-stamped, shot from a fixed angle directly across from the front door, corroborated Dr. Brooks' recording from the opposite side of the kitchen, confirmed the full sequence to the second, and delivered the prosecution its second independent camera from his own bedroom window. FBI analysts spent days cross-referencing Kane's field logs and deployment records against address demographics, neighborhood income data, and census-tract racial composition. What emerged was unambiguous: 216 warrantless residential checks across 7 years, 79% targeting Black and Latino households in affluent, predominantly white North Jersey suburbs, and 0 confirmed immigration violations produced by any of them. The probability of that distribution being random was, in the analyst's later testimony, effectively zero. The recovered text messages removed whatever interpretive flexibility the statistics might have preserved. The language casual, unguarded, written with the confidence of men never questioned about their methods described target addresses by landscaping quality, vehicle models, and visible markers of financial stability. Families were characterized in terms bearing no relation to immigration status. The text described a practice with its own logic, and that logic had nothing to do with law. Against this backdrop, Chief Brooks' 2-year preparation became fully visible for the first time. After his first complaint was returned labeled frivolous, he had not stopped. Every subsequent complaint, his own and those from officers he had mentored across 3 counties, had been copied, cross-referenced, and preserved entirely outside DHS custody. Every dismissal was logged. Every burial documented. He had understood from the beginning that the record itself was the argument, and that this kind of argument is won not through volume but through the patience that makes dismissal impossible. The FBI had not known the dossier existed. When Brooks produced it quietly, in the same level tone he used for everything, the lead investigator sat with it at length before speaking. 2 years of cross-referenced complaints and documented institutional failure, assembled by the man the institution had spent 2 years dismissing. It would have taken the FBI months to reconstruct independently. It was already complete. It had been waiting. As the hidden records of a man long dismissed by the system became the foundation of an ironclad federal case, one question lingered: do you believe that quietly, documenting every encounter with unchecked authority, could one day protect an entire community? If that resonates, type record in the comments and share this story so others learn the same quiet power. Vargas made his decision 3 days after the arrest. A cooperation agreement was signed by Thursday. His testimony confirmed the events of January 28 and the operational culture behind them, the unspoken performance expectations, the tolerance for pretextual enforcement, and the supervisory silence that had allowed a racially targeted pattern to document itself across 7 years without a single consequence. Caldwell lasted less than 40 minutes under questioning before the evidence produced a complete admission. The tip had been resentment long accumulated, finally activated against a family whose presence in a neighborhood he had decided he owned had become, over years, intolerable. He said so. The investigators recorded it verbatim. By the end of the second week, the case file ran to hundreds of pages. A federal grand jury convened in Newark. The indictments were broad, detailed, and built in significant part on the foundation assembled by the man the system had spent 2 years ignoring. The reckoning had been scheduled. It would be thorough and impossible to dismiss. The trial opened on a Tuesday morning in late May in a packed Newark federal courtroom. Every press credential had been claimed. Law enforcement representatives, civil rights observers, and national journalists who had followed the case since the footage went viral occupied the gallery with the weight of people who understood the consequences would extend well beyond the individuals named in the indictment into policy, institutional practice, and the legal standing of a document a federal agency had used as a warrant substitute for nearly a year. The prosecution opened without a statement. The lead attorney pressed play and stepped back. 4 minutes and 37 seconds of 4K footage filled the screen. Dr. Brooks's clinical narration, a quiet kitchen, hardwood creaking under Kane's footsteps. The jury watched a decorated chief stand motionless in a faded sweatshirt while a federal agent dismissed 34 years of service in 4 flat words, then placed a hand on his arm and held it while the narration continued around it, unbroken, as though the woman behind the phone had understood from the first frame exactly where this footage would land. The jury did not look away. Statistical testimony followed, converting the video's weight into quantified institutional pattern. A demographics analyst mapped 216 warrantless checks against census composition and household racial demographics, calculated the probability of randomness, and displayed the result in terms requiring no statistical training to understand. The deviation foreclosed argument. The defense had no explanation that survived contact with the numbers. FBI technicians walked the jury through the Caldwell evidence and sequenced cell tower, store footage, voice match, complaint history, the second floor video, each element closing and exit until the picture required no interpretation beyond what it plainly showed. Chief Brooks took the stand on day 4. He described the 2-year complaint sequence submitted, reviewed, discarded, and the dossier, when he opened it, how he maintained it through 24 months of institutional silence, and why he continued after each dismissal. He described the decision to trust the record in the absence of any institutional willingness to build one. He did not use the word patience. The dossier, entered into evidence, said everything the word could not convey. The defense rested after 2 days. Its central argument that the DHS memo provided lawful cover for the entry collapsed against a straightforward legal reality. The memo had no judicial authorization, had never been reviewed by a federal court, and could not substitute for a judicial warrant under established Fourth Amendment doctrine. Rejected not on procedural grounds but on substance, by a jury that had spent 4 days watching exactly what the memo had been used to do. The jury deliberated 4 hours and 43 minutes. Guilty on all counts: deprivation of rights under color of law, unlawful entry, assault on a law enforcement officer. The courtroom received the verdict in near silence. The outcome had been legible for months to anyone paying careful attention. The sentencing statement ran to 14 pages. It addressed the 7-year pattern, the misuse of the administrative warrant memo, and the nature of the January 28 assault, institutional contempt delivered into a private home and applied to a man whose career had been spent defending the constitutional values those agents had violated. Kane received 4 years and 8 months in federal prison plus a permanent lifetime ban from any law enforcement role, ended entirely, without restoration. Vargas received 14 months for his cooperation. Caldwell received 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory bias training. 3 months after sentencing, the Department of Homeland Security agreed to an $8,400,000 civil settlement, the largest individual ICE-related payout in New Jersey history, with no admission of liability. Chief and Dr. Brooks held a press conference on the steps of Montclair City Hall and described the settlement as a resource with a defined purpose. $3,200,000 to scholarships for Black and Latino law enforcement recruits. $2,100,000 to a legal defense fund for officers facing federal overreach. The remainder to civil rights organizations and Montclair community programs. The family retained nothing beyond attorney fees and announced this without ceremony. 8 months after the verdict, the New Jersey legislature passed the Brooks Accountability Package, mandatory judicial warrants for any federal residential entry in the state, required body cameras for ICE agents operating within New Jersey, and civilian oversight boards with genuine subpoena power. In the 12 months that followed, warrantless ICE residential checks in New Jersey dropped by 86%. One door opened without a knock, one phone already recording, one dossier assembled in silence by a man the system had marked frivolous and set aside. The door at 142 Oak Lane had not led where Kane and Vargas intended. It had led with the slow, procedural inevitability of a record that cannot be discredited to a courtroom, a sentencing, a law, and an 86% reduction in a practice carried out for 7 years without consequence. It had led to exactly what Chief Brooks had been building toward, not from the morning they entered his kitchen but from the morning, 2 years before that, when the system returned his first complaint marked frivolous, and he opened a new folder and began.
If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with someone who would appreciate it. And let's keep building this community together. And before you go, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what stood out to you the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next.